I am Joe McSherry, M-C-S-H-E-R-R-Y. I didn't copy my CV to you, but I was born in Washington, D.C. in 1943, graduated in physics from Harvard in 1965, with an MD and a PhD from Baylor College of Medicine in 1971. Did lots of doctoring and research things, but most importantly for this group, in 2002, I participated in a study committee that was created by the legislature, and cleverly they did not include any legislators, to consider the problem of medical marijuana because the legislature didn't know what to do about it. And the committee was relatively balanced. We had a person from the AG's office, a person from the state's attorney's, a representative of the police chief's organization, and a judge, as well as two doctors appointed by the medical society, I was one of them, and patients and some patient advocate groups. And we took testimony and heard lots of stuff from people who wrote the Institute of Medicine report, which I'm going to recommend to you at least several times, from 1999, but it is a great way to get up to a baseline. There were 13 conclusions of this committee, I would say, and two of them were agreed to by everyone. The law enforcement people couldn't get around our recommendations regarding how to circumvent the federal law. There seemed to be some sort of inconsistency from their point of view. But they did agree that marijuana is a medicine and that it is misclassified as a Schedule I drug at the federal level because it has accepted value, and Marinol is an example, which is a Schedule III drug, both here and at the federal level. It's not exceptionally prone to abuse and not remarkably toxic. The meat of why I'm here, though, is why would you approve marijuana given that you have Marinol already? The usual concern of people is Marinol is a combination of sesame oil and THC. And there are two reasons why it's not a useful medicine for the most part. One is it only has THC in it. And GW Pharmaceuticals, that makes an oral mucosal medicine called Sativex, did a great deal of research, and just straight THC is not the right way to provide the benefits of cannabis. There are many, there are 60, 70 cannabinoids in cannabis. Most of them are not psychoactive. THC is very psychoactive and really limits the use of Marinol, or for any of the benefits from cannabis. Cannabidiol, on the other hand, is not psychoactive, actually counteracts a lot of the effects of THC, and is a part of the Sativex medication. And there is research in recent years on various other cannabinoids which also have medical value without remarkable toxicity. So the absence of, or the only using the most toxic element in the marijuana is one reason Marinol is not a perfect drug. It's only useful for those who take the medicine orally and take THC only. The other significant factor is that it's taken orally. And when you inhale a drug, you get almost instant blood levels. And that's important for a lot of the people who use marijuana, for instance, for pain. And there's a little graphic that they've given to the group here. But basically, when you treat pain, you treat a baseline level of pain. And you usually use opiates and long-acting substances for that. But people also have breakthrough pain, which is characterized as something that lasts 30 minutes to an hour. And if you try to treat that with things like Percodan, and it comes on suddenly and you can't anticipate it, the Percodan kicks in after the pain has already gone away, and you get the side effects of the Percodan. The pharmaceutical industry has tried to treat this with fentanyl fizzies and lollipops, little things that go in through your mouth. It still takes 20 minutes to get any kind of relief. If they develop, I think they're working on an inhalational form of fentanyl, that's going to be almost as fast as heroin, with all of the side effects and risks of abuse of very rapid onset drugs, which are highly addictive. Marijuana goes in very rapidly, but in terms of its addictive potential, it's not the same order of magnitude. And another case where this is similarly important is people with nausea. And again, when you hear patients testify, you'll hear that when they're sick and throwing up, they can't take medicine at that particular point. And on the other hand, you can inhale cannabis and get the THC value, which has been well studied. It works as a 5-HT3 blocker, and as well as working in the central nervous system on cannabinoid receptors, which reduce the nausea component. The 5-HT3 blockers are what the pharmaceutical industry uses to control vomiting. Being able to inhale that is a great advantage for people who take drugs which make them very ill or have other responsibilities. On the third page, I also have included for you some graphs, and these are in the, I left Mr. Gesson with the references that I brought for this. But when you take THC orally, only 6% of it gets into the blood. And how much gets into the blood is highly unpredictable. The top graph on that page shows a large rise. It's a solid line. That's an inactive metabolite of THC. The dashed line is an active metabolite. And the dotted line down there, barely getting off ground zero, on the left-hand side are blood levels, and the bottom is time. The THC very rarely gets absorbed, which is why in studies people often find that patients who are complaining of toxicity don't have measurable levels in their blood. If you're going to take it at bedtime and you're going to sleep through any intoxication you get, it's a potentially very useful way of delivering the medicine. If you look at the next graph down, though, when you inhale it, the THC level is a dotted line that goes way up on the blood level side and comes down again within a half an hour. The solid black line again is the metabolites, which are inactive, and the dashed line, there's not very much of that, but that's the active metabolite. So when you inhale it, goes in, it's redistributed in the body so that the effects of the cannabis, or the THC I should say, last for a couple of hours. But the ability to get it in very quickly is very important to people with nausea, breakthrough pain, and things like that. On the next page I have another, these are graphs swiped out of those articles, of a study of when doctors give medicine, we like to give 325 milligrams of aspirin or something we know what we're doing, we know it's the right dose, it should take care of people. And when you inhale things, you don't really know how much goes in or how much stays, unless you do a lot of complicated measurements. And so it happens that tobacco was found 40 years ago. People who smoke to get a level of nicotine. So if you want to sell more cigarettes, you sell low tar and nicotine cigarettes, because then you sell more cigarettes. If you wanted to cut down on smoking, you give everybody Camels. A similar situation exists with smoking cannabis. No matter what you buy on the street, the illegal market, from the pharmacy or wherever else, you will inhale to get an effect. And so this is a study that was done with NIDA-approved THC cigarettes of 3 different strengths, one with 1.7% THC, which is kind of like modified rope, 3.4% THC cigarette, which is probably standard Mexican grade stuff, and I don't know what they call these things nowadays, but the 6.8% stuff is probably like Acapulco Gold. In the left-hand column, the vertical axis is carbon monoxide. And there is also the open squares, the closed squares of the smoked variety. They cut each of these cigarettes in half, and one day they did smoke the cigarette, the other day they did it through a vaporization system, which is a much preferable system. But the lowest doses, they get a lot of carbon monoxide basically from smoking it. They still get quite a bit at the 3.4% dose, and considerably less at 6.8% THC content. So the fact that the pot you get today, if you're lucky, is not the pot your grandfather got or father got, actually is the wrong way of putting it, because the stronger the cannabis, the less you'll smoke. The less you'll get the polycyclic hydrocarbons, the less you'll get the carbon monoxide. On the right-hand column is the subjective levels these people achieve, with the vertical line being their visual analog scale of how intoxicated or high or whatever they were. And it's apparent that they all, no matter which kind of cigarette you get, you go up to about a 70 on that scale rating.